The storm tore across the dark skies of Arendor, a planet that had seen centuries of war. Lightning cut through the clouds, illuminating the jagged spires of the vampire citadel. From the highest tower, the vampire queen, Lyrena, stood tall, her black and crimson robes whipping violently in the wind. Her eyes glowed like molten gold, piercing the darkness around her. Tonight was supposed to be her triumph, yet the taste of blood in the air was bitter, not victorious. Lyrena's army had marched into battle against the rebel faction that dared to rise against her rule. Her soldiers were elite, fast and deadly, but the enemy had grown stronger, their weapons sharper, and their strategy cunning. The queen herself had led the charge, her blade slicing through darkness with the grace of centuries of training. Every strike she delivered was precise, every movement lethal. Her enemies had once feared her, whispered her name as a nightmare come alive. Now their fear had turned into hatred, their desperation into deadly resolve. She moved like a shadow, striking down one opponent after another. Yet even a queen cannot fight alone forever. A sudden explosion shook the ground beneath her feet. She stumbled, her senses momentarily overwhelmed by smoke, debris, and the screams of both her soldiers and enemies alike. From the corner of her eye she saw the source, a massive weapon, unlike anything she had faced before. Its energy pulse was brutal, burning with a violet light that seared through armor and flesh alike. She knew immediately that this was no ordinary human-made device. Whoever had brought it here had studied her, predicted her movements, and designed it to end her reign. A second blast came, and this time it hit her squarely in the chest. Her knees buckled. Pain, sharp and blinding, tore through her body, and for the first time in decades, Lyrena felt herself faltering. She fell to the cold stone floor of the citadel balcony, her golden eyes dimming as the storm above mirrored the chaos around her. Her breath came in shallow gasps. She had fought countless battles, defeated powerful enemies, and survived countless assassination attempts. Yet now, lying broken and bleeding, she realized she might not rise again. Her soldiers screamed her name, rushing forward, but they were too few, too late. The rebels had surrounded them, their weapons raised and their faces twisted with hatred. Lyrena, despite the agony, lifted her head. Her mind raced. She could summon her powers, her ancient blood magic, but each attempt brought her closer to collapse. Her strength was failing. Her vision blurred and the world seemed to spin. She knew she had only moments before darkness would claim her. "I will not die yet," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the roar of the storm. Pride burned as fiercely as her wounds, but even pride cannot hold back death forever. Her hands trembled as she reached for her blade, but her body would not obey. She closed her eyes, preparing to surrender, to let the storm take her as it had taken so many before. Centuries of ruling, of conquering, of commanding armies, all seemed to fade in a heartbeat. And then she felt nothing. The world around her disappeared. The screams, the wind, the pounding rain, it all vanished. For a brief, fleeting moment, there was only silence. Lyrena, the vampire queen, had closed her eyes to die. She accepted it, almost peacefully, almost as if surrendering to the inevitable was a relief. But fate, as always, had other plans. Far below the citadel, hidden among the thick, glowing forests, a human moved carefully through the undergrowth. His name was Ethan Hale, an explorer and soldier of the United Earth Alliance. Unlike the disciplined armies of Lyrena's world, Ethan relied on stealth, intelligence, and courage to survive. His mission had been reconnaissance, observe the political unrest of Arendor, document the new weapons, and avoid contact with the vampire forces. Yet luck and destiny had other plans. Lightning split the sky, and Ethan froze. His eyes caught something strange, something that did not belong. A figure on the balcony, falling, or perhaps being thrown into the darkness below. He squinted, trying to make sense of the movement. The figure landed near the edge of the forest with a soft thud, hidden by the glow of alien plants. Without thinking, Ethan ran, boots pounding the uneven ground. The storm did not deter him. Instinct drove him forward. When he reached the fallen figure, he froze. At first, he thought it was a corpse. The being lay motionless, her form slender and regal despite the blood soaking her robes. Her hair, long and black as midnight, fanned out around her head. Something about her aura, ancient, commanding, terrifying, made Ethan hesitate. This was no ordinary being. But she was alive, faintly. He could see her chest moving, slow and shallow. "Stay with me," he murmured, kneeling beside her. His hands were trained to provide first aid. And though he had never dealt with a creature like this, instinct guided him. He tore part of his jacket to bind her wounds, applied pressure where blood leaked freely, and whispered words of encouragement, even though he didn't know if she could understand. Slowly, Lorena stirred. Her eyes flickered beneath closed lids, her senses slowly returning. And then she saw him, a human, strong, confident, yet gentle in his movements. Her eyes, glowing gold, widened. She expected a guard, a soldier, an enemy. But not this. The human looked back at her with concern, not fear. He held her carefully, as if she were precious and fragile, yet there was an unmistakable strength in his grip. Lorena, the eternal ruler of Arendor, could not remember the last time anyone had touched her without trembling. Her mind struggled to comprehend the situation. "Who are you?" she whispered, her voice weak, almost like a child's. "Name's Ethan," he replied simply, keeping his voice calm despite the storm. "You're safe for now. Just hold on. Don't close your eyes again." Lorena tried to move, to push him away, but her body refused. Pain lanced through her limbs, and her vision swam. The human was warm, alive, unafraid. She had been betrayed, hunted, and attacked by countless beings in her life. Yet this human felt different. She had expected to be loathed, feared, or ignored. Instead, he had saved her. For the first time in her life, she felt something unfamiliar. Vulnerability without shame. And somewhere in the shadow of her pain, a seed of curiosity began to grow. Hours passed. Ethan worked tirelessly through the night, stabilizing her injuries with both human medicine and makeshift tools. Lorena remained mostly unconscious, her breaths shallow, but each time she stirred, she found herself watching him. She observed how he moved, how he thought, how he cared. And slowly, she began to understand a truth she had never allowed herself to consider. Humans were capable of remarkable courage, resilience, and empathy. Traits her own kind often lacked in their pursuit of power. When morning came, the storm had passed. The sky was a pale violet, alien suns beginning to pierce the canopy of the forest. Ethan sat beside her, weary but vigilant. Lorena opened her eyes, slowly, blinking against the light. The first thing she saw was him, human, alive, and staring back at her with an expression of quiet determination. She tried to speak, but the words came out as a hoarse whisper. "Why? Did you help me?" Ethan shrugged, offering a small smile. "Because you needed it. Because no one should die alone." Her golden eyes studied him. The words were strange, almost meaningless to her centuries-hardened mind, yet they carried a weight she could not ignore. And in that moment, something changed. She realized that the world was larger than her throne, larger than her armies. Perhaps there was power beyond blood and fear. Perhaps, just perhaps, humans, fragile, fleeting, mortal humans, could teach even a vampire queen something new. And for the first time in centuries, Lorena did not feel the pull of death. She felt something else: curiosity, awe, and an inkling of trust toward the human who dared to hold her when all others would have let her fall. The battle for her life was over, for now. But the journey she had just begun would change everything: her empire, her people, and herself. Because in the hands of a human, the vampire queen had discovered something more powerful than any weapon, any army, or any magic: hope. The forest was quiet now, bathed in soft violet light from the twin suns of Arendor. The storm had passed, leaving behind the smell of wet earth and the faint hum of alien insects. Ethan carefully carried the vampire queen, Lorena, through the dense foliage. She was heavy, though not by human standards. Her slender frame hid centuries of strength and combat experience. Yet the injuries she had sustained in the battle were severe. Each movement caused her to wince, a sharp hiss escaping her lips. "Almost there," Ethan murmured, brushing aside glowing vines with one hand while holding her steady with the other. "You just need to stay still." Lorena's golden eyes fluttered open, focusing on him. Pain etched across her features, yet there was a sharp intelligence in her gaze, calculating and wary. She had survived countless wars, ruled entire civilizations, and faced beings far more deadly than any human. Yet here she was, lying helpless in the arms of a human, unable to move, unable to defend herself. "You carry me like a child," she said, her voice hoarse but edged with disbelief. Ethan chuckled softly. "You'd be surprised how strong some humans can be. Just trust me." She studied him, noting his calm determination. Unlike the soldiers she had commanded or enemies who had tried to kill her, this human did not look fearful, greedy, or opportunistic. He simply looked human, simple, yet brave. And for reasons she could not understand, she felt a flicker of trust. They finally reached a hidden clearing where Ethan had set up a small human base. The structure was compact but efficient, built from metal and reinforced glass, with equipment humming softly inside. It was nothing compared to the grandeur of the vampire citadel, yet it was functional and safe. He laid her gently on a medical cot, checking her wounds again. "Your injuries are worse than I thought," he admitted, tightening a bandage around her arm. "I can help you heal, but you'll need to cooperate. Move too much and, well, you might not make it." Lorena tried to sit up, a reflexive motion born of pride and habit, but pain forced her back down. I cannot rely on humans," she whispered. "I have never depended on anyone." "You're doing it now," Ethan said simply. "And it's okay. No one has to be alone all the time, not even a queen." The word struck her. In centuries of ruling her empire, no one had ever spoken to her like that. Even her advisors, loyal to a fault, spoke in flattery or fear. This human spoke plainly, without awe or terror, and yet there was power in his honesty. Lorena found herself listening, not as a ruler, but as a wounded being. For hours Ethan worked. He cleaned her wounds with antiseptic, applied a combination of alien medicine scavenged from her surroundings, and used human bandages to stabilize her broken arm and leg. Lorena endured in silence, though she could not hide her curiosity. She watched every movement, every tool, every procedure. The methods were strange, unfamiliar, yet effective. The human's mind was sharp, calculating, and precise. He analyzed each injury with logic rather than fear or superstition. "You heal differently than my people," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan looked up, wiping his hands. "Humans adapt. We don't always have magic or centuries of experience, but we think, we experiment, we keep going." She frowned. "Experiment? I am not a specimen." "No, you're a patient," he corrected gently. "And I'm not experimenting on you. I'm trying to save you. You might be stronger than anything I've ever faced, but you're hurt. That's all that matters right now." Lyrena considered his words. There was no mockery in his tone, no desire to dominate her. In fact, he treated her almost equally. The thought was disorienting. For centuries, she had been untouchable, feared by all. And now, a human held her life in his hands, and she felt strangely calm. Days passed. Lyrena remained in the human base, slowly regaining strength. Ethan had built her a comfortable resting area, isolated yet safe, where she could recover without risk of ambush. As she healed, their conversations began. At first, they were simple, questions about basic survival, alien medicine, and her injuries. "Your people rule by fear?" Ethan asked one afternoon, curiosity bright in his voice. Lyrena hesitated. She had been trained to measure every word, to hide intentions behind layers of diplomacy. Yet, in this forest with no witnesses, she felt different. "Yes," she admitted, "fear is respect. Without it, no one obeys. But fear is a heavy burden, one that grows heavier with each generation." Ethan nodded. "Humans can lead differently. By respect, by trust, by understanding. You don't always need fear." The words were simple, yet they cut through centuries of pride and tradition. Lyrena realized that this human, fragile and mortal, saw a truth her own people often ignored. There was strength in compassion. There was power in trust. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, Lyrena stepped outside the base for the first time. The forest glowed softly, bioluminescent plants lighting her path. She moved slowly, leaning on a staff Ethan had fashioned for her. Her senses were alive. The smells of the forest, the distant sounds of alien wildlife, the whisper of the wind, but they were different now. Less threatening, less oppressive. Ethan followed, keeping a careful watch. "You're stronger than yesterday," he said. "Just keep moving, one step at a time." She looked at him, noting how human he was, imperfections and all. And yet, he had saved her life. He had treated her with care, without fear, without expectation. Her golden eyes softened. "I do not understand humans," she admitted. "How can you be so simple yet strong?" "Maybe because we have no choice," he replied, smiling. "We survive because we have to. We help each other because it makes sense. And sometimes, we surprise ourselves." Lyrena pondered his words. There was wisdom in them, though different from the wisdom she had learned in centuries of rule. Perhaps humans were weak in some ways, but strong in ways her people could never understand. But peace was fleeting. Unknown to them, scouts from the rebel faction had discovered that the Queen survived. A patrol of alien hunters, ruthless and cunning, moved through the forest, following traces of blood and broken branches. They did not know she had been healed by a human. They only knew that their prey had survived. And to them, a living vampire queen meant danger, vengeance, and opportunity. Ethan noticed signs of movement, broken twigs, footprints, and the faint hum of alien technology. He paused, hand on his weapon. "You need to rest inside," he said firmly. "They're close. If they find you weak—" His words hung in the air, unfinished but clear. Lyrena's eyes narrowed. "I will not hide like a child," she said. "I am the Queen. They will not defeat me while I draw breath." Ethan looked at her, understanding her pride but knowing the danger. "You can be the Queen and still survive," he said gently. "You don't have to do this alone." Her gaze softened again. For the first time, centuries of pride bowed slightly before human wisdom. She realized that strength could come from alliance, from trust, from letting someone help. And perhaps, in this small, fragile human, she had found more than just a guardian. She had found a partner, a guide, a bridge between her ancient world and the wider universe. The night deepened. Lyrena, though still weak, trained with Ethan in small ways, strengthening her limbs, practicing careful movement, learning to trust a human's guidance. Their bond grew quietly, forged in shared effort and silent understanding. She began to see humans not as fragile beings to be ruled, but as creatures capable of courage, creativity, and empathy. And as dawn approached, the first thought that crossed her mind in centuries was not of vengeance, or power, or fear. It was of gratitude. She would survive, and when she did, her people would see a new queen, one changed by the hands of a human who had dared to save her life when all others had let her fall. For the first time in centuries, Lyrena allowed herself to hope, not just for life, but for something greater. Because humans were fragile? Yes. But in that fragility was a strength she could not yet name, a power that,